Hi, it's been a while. I haven't uploaded a video in a little bit, and this is an old video that I recorded back in October before the Mandela Catalog Volume 4's release. I added Volume 4's review at the end. Well, obviously. I was recording it while I was sick, so if my voice sounds a little crusty in it, and if the mic peaks, and if you hear me breathing, please ignore it because, I was sick, and, I'll have another disclaimer before we review Volume 4 towards that part of the video, so yes, please enjoy the video, and go follow my other socials. I upload, more stuff on my TikTok if you want more original content. So yeah, thank you and enjoy.
I'm pretty sure to nobody's damn surprise that ever since the Walton Files video came out, I would at least do a video on the Mandela Catalog, which is another analog horror series that I really like. So with a little background knowledge on the Mandela Catalog, the first video in the set universe came out in June 9th, 2021, and was on the channel Alex Kister, or the creator's channel, I guess. Now, also, background knowledge from this time, people were really looking at the genre as analog horror, as they're picking apart pretty much most of the tropes that every series at least had some part of in, and a lot of them were like creepy noises, characters looking at you for a set amount of time, and Among Us faces for the most part. People were picking it apart because every series at least had a couple of these elements, like I said. And I think the thing is, Mandela Catalog, they were looking for something different, which towards the beginning of it, which we'll get into later, it did start out usually with the same tropes, but with the concept of it using religion as its main backdrop, that these things took over religion and are now the villains of this series, which we'll get into later, I promise. And I think the concept itself saved it from it being just like, oh, it's another analog horror series, which is interesting. So I'm not gonna talk about it too much here. If you want a good video on it, I'd recommend Sagan Hawk's video on the Mandela Catalog. It was actually really good, so I'll just leave a link to it in the description. Without any further exposition, let's get on to the first episode, or video. Also, I'm sick, by the way.
You know how I feel about your house.
Yeah, that's fine. One last thing, try to get a good view of
So the first episode starts out with a fucking Christ, I don't even know what the fuck these are. These shitty government introductory tapes to the threat, company introduction. Yeah, I'm fucking done with these shits. I'm fucking done. I'm leaving. I hate these things. I'm never coming back, bro. I'm done with this stuff. I'm done. Alright, I feel like I'm doing this part of the video a disservice, but at the same time, really the same. Once you've seen one of these, you've seen them all. The first series to do it really well was Local 58 in their first, like, you know, government PSA video. And to an extent, Scrimpus McGrimpus's Five Nights at Freddy's VHS series too. They did them really well, and only very few series have come to do them well. A lot of series use this type of government PSA company introductory video to start out series, which is just kind of copy and pasted. You probably have heard this point from multiple other people, but it's just true. Weird entity is trying to tell us to die and kill ourselves, or animatronics or creatures in this restaurant or facility go rogue. It's just, you've seen them all and they get really tiresome, and you kind of wish they do different stuff eventually. I haven't really seen a series do stuff differently other than maybe the backrooms, but even then let's just move on to the next part. So then we move on from that really shitty, very good government PSA video. I just found out what the fuck it was called. We move on to Mark Heathcliff and Caesar Torres, as Caesar Salad over here calls Mark from Subway, talk about how his mom collapsed on the floor and how he needs to take her to the hospital for some fucking reason. And then Mark's like, yeah, I'll do it. I just don't want to go to your fucking house. That place creeps me the fuck out. As it should, but to be honest, he could have just turned on all the damn lights in the house. I'm gonna be honest, when I was like 10, I was still scared of the dark, and the way I combated that was to turn on every light in the house. Yeah, it scared me to walk in a dark room to find a light switch. So then what happens is we get different shots of him driving to the house, different camera shots of the house, and then we eventually see the alternate in a close-up, I guess, which, I mean, it's a jump scare, and you know, I don't really like jump scares, so it's not because they're scary, it's just because they're kind of cheap way of scaring the viewer, and they usually don't get most people, or unless you're one of those people that watch Megan is Missing and, you know, everything scares you, and then we move on to, you know, Mark, you know, committed not live anymore because nobody came for him, which I think this is an interesting shot because a lot of stuff in Mandela Catalog, especially in these earlier videos, come back and some form in a later episode, and we'll see this sometime in episode 3, but we'll talk about that when it shows up. And then we move on to the final parts of the video, which is like a 911 operator PSA or company guide on what to do in their job if they encounter an alternate. And I actually like this part of the video. It actually is chilling to hear if there is an alternate. They can't really do anything, and they can't really say that much because then they'll give away their fear. It's actually interesting seeing more of the world of how the police respond to this, to the alternate attacks, than most other analog horror series would do. They would just be like, oh, here's the threat, here's how everything else handles it. I like how they're focusing more on the police in this series. It's actually really interesting and different, a good different perspective from other series that I've seen. And then we move on to the final part. Some fucking 5-year-old, which is probably like a Roblox fan or something, and he moves on through his drawings and what he's saying. Oh, there's an intruder in the house. And then you move on to this top 10 creepy police sketches. I think Sagan Hawk said in this video, used this before, and it is genuinely, once you've seen this image, it's like, well, you know it's not an original piece. They looked it up on Google. Now, the main problem with this first episode is that it strongly hits the basic tropes of analog horror around this time that everyone was criticizing, and it pretty much is all these, you know, creepy imagery, company PSA government guide video, and just like text-to-speech reading you what you would have to do. Around this time is what a lot of analog horror did, and I feel like they should stop striving to do this, since yeah, it is easier to do, but at the same time you're kind of limited by doing this since most people have seen most of this stuff already. And again, I don't want to get too much into the tropes, but I feel like most analog horrors, and in general just horror, should stop doing the basic tropes that everything does. I feel like they should start doing more creative stuff just to give people to see something new that they haven't seen. Anyways, if I were to score this episode, it'd probably be like a 5 out of 10. I don't know. It didn't really get me. It's not really scary, and rewatching it around a year later, it still doesn't get me now, and it didn't get me back then. So yeah, 5 out of 10. Let's go. Next one. Before we get to the next episode, I want to talk about Mandela Catalog's world building. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it uses a cool and unique premise and concept for this story. Religion has been taken over by some type of demon or alien or whatever, and is now using religion to children, using TVs to get children and people. It's really interesting seeing a different concept, because, you know, most other series would be like, oh, it's an alien. Oh, it's a Freddy's robot. Something like that. And, you know, you've seen most of them, and it's just really annoying to see it again for the 1000th time. The thing I like about Mandela Catalog's world building is that it's around the early 2000s in later's episodes, and I really like that, considering you don't really see early 2000s analog horror type stuff. You only see stuff from like 80s or late 70s, 90s. I think my favorite video from this type of world building videos is the mymovie.mp4. I think it's really cool seeing like early 2000s nostalgia and seeing stuff like, oh, a ghost sighting video made on Windows Movie Maker. So pretty much this next episode starts with a new colorful cast of characters, Adam Murray and Jonah Mitchell. I think I said those right. Anyways, they're wanted by the FBI for like getting free V-Bucks or something, and then they get a call from this one lady that needs help investigating her house because she hears her quote-unquote dead cat, which, come on, it's Mandela Catalog. We know what it's gonna be. They're kind of hesitant at first, but then they learn they're gonna get paid $500 a night. So of course they're like, yeah, let's fucking do this. I do like how they try to build the world up with subtle world building, like how alternate attacks have been on the rise and how the authorities are trying to deal with that, which is a setup for the next video, but we'll get into that later. So they arrive at the house. There appears to be nothing wrong with the house, and then something starts going wrong. You know, their spirit box starts bugging, and then you know, the alternate appears. And you know, when I actually like when he appears, because you don't really hear them, you just see the images and you have to read them, so you don't hear the voices. I actually like that. Since he appears, you don't really hear them, but then start hearing them, they get contact back, and then they start hearing meowing by an iguana of some sort down the stairs of the door they couldn't open. Alright, so our main protagonists get split up. One of them goes down the stairs, the other one stays in the car. Our main protagonist, what the fuck is his name? Adam, he goes down, he sees the iguana on the TV. Oh shit. And then the dude shows up. I actually like how this keeps continuity with the other videos that we've seen. We see pretty much how this dude, I guess, which he made the alternates. I'm not caught up with the lore yet, and I guess this is how he takes people from the TVs, I guess, which makes sense why they're outlawed, because, I mean, if you saw this thing, it makes sense why you want to smash most of the TVs. Before that, Jonah and Adam argue about stuff, about why they keep doing this stuff, and how they're not going to get his mom or his girlfriend back. One of those two. I actually like the scene, and I actually like that they leave each other, which is really even sadder, considering you didn't really have that much time to bond with these characters, but seeing how one of them leaves, and then the voice is just like...
I actually really like that scene. And when he gets out of the car to start, you know, like screaming, you know, his friend pretty much just died. I actually like that they went out to go film this. It's better than, you know, them just doing like, you know, a government PSA video in an editing software. It's actually adding more world to the story and maybe a little bit more fear or horror, but not by much. The scares in this video don't really get you. The alternate isn't really that scary. And overall, while it is one of my favorite videos considering they actually filmed this, it is, the scare and the horror is on the weaker side. So I'd probably give this about like a 7.5, I think would be a decent enough score. Yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Started crying again. Same time, I don't know what to do.
Oh my god, Sophie Walton. Alright, so this episode's an 8 out of 10. Let's just move on. Alright, in all seriousness, this episode's probably the best out of all of the 3 that are released so far. It just did the most things right. It pretty much took what was good from the older episodes and made them better. And it took didn't work or what was bad in the previous episodes and, again, made them better. The reason why this episode worked so much was because it just did a lot of stuff well. Like the opening clip, it establishes stuff and probably from a former character, like the dude from the last episode. What was his name? Adam, I think? I don't fucking remember. It establishes that his mom went missing. I'm not a lore junkie, I don't know. Correct me in the comments. And I think their general aspect for this episode was to focus on the police officers and how they would respond to a situation like an alternate attack or an alternate break-in or something like that. And I like how it ties in stuff from older episodes, like the dude that killed himself. What was his fucking name? Mark Heathcliff. Yeah, I forgot. Fuck. And also that old like home break-in with, you could see it says we cannot show the footage because the alternate is tampering with the guy's body. This face thing, like describing how it's gonna like kidnap you, it's actually really cool. I actually like this part. This is part of my favorite part from the video, next to like the police officer part. Well, we'll get to that. But pretty much the video starts out with the mom talking to her ex-husband. I don't know, some bullshit happened. They got a divorce, and then the mom gets kidnapped by the Satan dude. I forgot what the fuck his name was. And then we move on to the dude who was getting elected as like the next like police chief or some shit like that. I don't fucking know. And then the police get a call about a guy who didn't want to go to school. Sucks to be him. Oh wait, fuck, he killed himself. Oh shit. And then the police find him dead, and they find the voice recording of voices outside his room from the other alternates. I like how they bring back Mark and Caesar from the first video, and they bring back this plot point just to tie it off. Caesar got taken over by an alternate, and you know, Mark committed skull emoji. And then we move on to the face thing talking to you, saying how it's gonna kidnap you. This is one of my favorite parts of the video. It's pretty good. And then we move on to the Stature Davis dude getting a call on his 911 dispatch about somebody having a home intruder, which is presumed to be an alternate. And then it cuts to him calling an officer just to go over there, check it out. She gets over there and the cop already left and they're investigating the area. I actually really like this part, since if you've seen enough top 15 scary 911 calls, you would kind of get scared at this because it's a real world situation. But in this case, I think it does it pretty well. Also, did I mention that the voice acting was really good in this series? No? Okay. So then the officers enter the house, and then Ruth goes missing. And then the officer, I forgot his fucking name, he encounters an alternate, and then he starts getting mimicked. I actually like how the alternate is set up, which from everything we're told up to this point, they'll impersonate you and pretty much look like you, except like with some different features sometimes. And I actually like how it's set up with the voice being the same, and then you eventually see it, which leads us to the final part of the video, which is the alternate showing up and taking the form of the police officer, and then the video ends. I actually like the build up to the alternate until this video. Before this, we've only heard of the alternates and heard of what they could do, but I actually like that we get to see it at the end of the video and how he takes somebody else's form. But why does it look like Gollum from Lord of the Rings? That's my one nitpick. The alternate looks kind of poorly made, but that's just me though. So if I were to score this episode, it'd probably be an 8. There's some things that were a little weak, like I don't think we needed the notebook scenes, and some of the random transitions were okay, I guess, which I don't think needed to be in there and kind of ruined the pacing. But overall, this episode's pretty solid, so I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. Yeah, 8 sounds good. So the first episode is probably the worst episode of all these 3. The second and the third are the best episodes. The third one being the best, but my personal favorite's still the second one because there's more IRL bits in it and it just makes it feel better, and the early 2000s aesthetic of it, I don't know, personally I just like that. Alright guys, change of plans. I originally recorded that video back in October to be a Halloween special, but I got too lazy to finish it, and I never finished it. And I was gonna originally release it during Volume 4's release, but I didn't because I forgot. And now Volume 4 is released, and, well, or at least a while ago. Let's just review it.
We couldn't be more saddened by the passing of such a pure soul. Jonah passed away peacefully, surrounded by his loved ones.
So, the Mandela Catalog Volume 4 starts out like how any Mandela Catalog video starts out. It explains how God made the world, and how Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, and they doomed all of us to eternity. And then we move on to present time, where Dave is talking to O'Brien about how their lives are going, and to be honest, I really like in real life shots look. You know they're not actually in real life shots, but the way they're presented as like photoshopped in real life is actually pretty cool, and I like how most of the screenshots are made. It's pretty cool because you see the actor and then you see the shittily made green screen shot, which is intentional, obviously, and I like how this aesthetic is shown and how they've been doing this since Volume 3, and I generally think it adds its own personality to Mandela Catalog, and more for the horror aesthetic. And then this one employee girl finds a VHS that was left from Thatcher. Yes, Thatcher's alive from the last video. There's a video that pretty much explains how he survived alternate attack, and it's actually pretty cool seeing that he's alive. And then this girl goes into the employee's room and finds a TV, plays the VHS tape, which has some weird ass shit on it. And then we see Thatcher's beautiful face come onto screen after this weird child drawing video. But then the early 2000s nostalgia comes on as Sarah Heathcliff explains how the Mandela Paranormal Society is starting up at her school. I think it's pretty cool how they're keeping the Heathcliff name relevant even after everything that happened with Mark. I think it just goes to show the interconnectivity of this world's logic and shit. And then Adam Murray shows up to rizz up Sarah and be like, hey, I can work with you. And then she's like, okay. And then they start working together and they make an announcement video. And then Adam goes to show Sarah this like abandoned crime scene area, and then a bunch of these hands show up out of nowhere and it's like, okay. And then Sarah suggests Adam should get a partner. And then we get a 2-year time skip, which usually these are for characters to develop, but we haven't really seen much of these characters. So it's interesting that they did a time skip, but we've seen Adam, so it's assuming that this is what happened in between 2 years when him and Jonah were, oh yeah, I found out his name's Jonah. We're doing all this alternate hunting and how they got wanted by the FBI. So it's like this what happened before episode 2. And then Adam explains what happened to Jonah and yeah, pretty much outs himself as the biggest red flag in this entire series. And then we see this shot of how Mandela County's population has been going down drastically over the past couple years, and we hear Thatcher's beautiful voice narrate some speech and how he survived and how he feels guilt after Ruth's death. And if you don't know, Ruth's the police officer that went out to go look for what happened to that one house in episode 3. And then we get this cool shot of a alternate of Thatcher, and it's pretty cool effect where you could hear the volume on each like headphone speaker left and right. It's actually pretty cool. It's pretty uncanny seeing how the eyes and the mouth moves on the alternate. Pretty cool scene. And then we get a video of Thatcher narrating his thoughts and how he starts crying over Ruth. Honestly, man, just get over it. Like, really? She's dead. She's gone. Get over it. And then we get a clip of Sarah and Adam's conversation about the memorial video they made for Jonah. Guys, remember to rate 5 stars on my YouTube channel. I like how the era this is taking place in, they kept the era that YouTube was in around this point. I like how they kept that detail. It's actually pretty cool. And then we move on to a Microsoft Face Studio thing, and this shit's just creepy as hell. I mean, like, if anybody put out a program like this, who the fuck would use it with this fucking terrifying ass thing? This thing actually freaked me out. I did not like looking at this thing. And then of course the face thing starts bugging out. Like, I'm not surprised. Like, I mean, look at it. He just looks fucked up. And then the girl from the beginning of the video with the VHS tape goes to the police station to try to look for Thatcher Davis, and he is not there. And I think the alternate of him lives there, so the next episode should be interesting. And then we get a fucking scene of Dave. Yes, fucking Dave meeting Angel Gabriel and fucking dying. He fucking dies, dog. Why? And then the video ends off with this, I think, alternate of Jonah with which is actually pretty interesting and ends off the viewer leaving pretty scared. And I actually like these alternates that they're doing for these videos. Actually, seeing them more is pretty cool. I think the build up to the alternates was pretty cool as well too. So this video gets a 9 out of 10 for me. And now originally I was gonna give this series an 8.5 out of 10 because the third episode, while it was the best at the time, still the series felt me leaving like I needed more, like with the characters that left off on with being Yona and Adam, and the first video being a little subpar and leaving me wanting more. Also with the beginning of the series, I think that's what impacted my score originally, but after seeing this fourth episode, it makes me realize that the series is going on its own and doing its own thing now, and it kind of makes me happy. With the version of analog horror it is using is not the one that we don't see too much with, is early 2000s analog horror, which is actually pretty cool. With stuff like the early internet stuff also being pretty cool to see. This is definitely the best video of all 4 videos that has been released so far, and it's definitely pretty good. I think the creator of the series is taking the series in a really good direction. Seeing how episode 4 left off and how episode 5 might be is leaving me wanting more. Also how a lot of the side videos also patch up things with characters you don't really see that much, like the one with Thatcher. I think the series is going to go places, and I generally think this series is one of the best analog horror series on YouTube, with it dropping most of the main analog horror tropes from the first episode, and then the second episode kind of having some of them, and then the third episode and this episode going on a completely different road. I feel like the next episodes are going to be even better. So Mandela Effect magazine gets a 9 out of 10 and a gold sticker.